Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Tradesman Experience. This is the podcast built by tradesmen for tradesmen. My name is Josh, and between the holidays, on the other mic is Mr. Nate Newton. Nate, how are you, sir?
I'm fucking hanging in there, man. Glad Christmas is over. December's just a fucking mad month, and I'm taking like half the week off. I'm gonna go visit some friends, but I don't know. Just glad that part's done,
I had a blast shooting clay birds or
or
clay pigeons. I don't know how you guys say it out here, but
that was
what we call it.
Yeah, that was a good time. I liked you guys' the pickup part of the game too, like shooting the debris. Like that's
pieces.
Yeah, that's a whole other element to it, And Becca was doing good. That was her first time out there with her new shotgun.
Yep.
And that's always
she was killing it, man.
She was, yeah.
It's enjoyable for me to see people kind of get introduced to that, right?
Yeah.
Shooting firearms in general.
Yeah.
But getting to shooting a shotgun is one thing. Shooting clay pigeons is completely different.
Oh, yeah.
Because we just do the manual throw, and we always try to do trick throws and crazy shit. And
I ended up throwing one right at the ground, and you still shot it anyway.
Matt shot it. It's rabbit.
Yeah, just stuck right in the fucking snow.
But watching somebody get to experience that is fun, and to get a new shotgun, and then I don't know if that was her first time doing that, but it's definitely. She's only done a couple times, if so.
Yeah.
And she was hitting birds.
Right. Yeah. You should have seen me on my first date with that over-under Matt got me.
Yeah.
We went out and shot the sporting clay range.
Oh, yeah. Walker River?
Yeah, Walker River. Yeah. But I couldn't hit anything with that fucking gun. I'm so used to my bird gun, like my longer duck hunting gun.
I had the same problem.
Yeah. So that over-under, I should have brought that with me. I'm weird about taking that thing out in the dirt, though, just because it's a really nice shotgun. So
I was because I had mine. I was being very
cautious.
I was. I set it down in the cab of the side-by-side. Right. If I wasn't holding it, that's where it was setting.
Right.
But we also got lucky. It was like 50 and sunny.
Yeah. It was gorgeous. Perfect weather for it.
Yeah. So a lot of fun. Very small Christmas. This was the first Christmas in my entire life that I got to do whatever I wanted. I had no obligations, and I rather enjoyed.
Yeah,
that
was the highlight of the day. Was out there at the ranch.
Yeah,
bounced around and saw some other folks I hadn't seen in a while, and did breakfast with my family and whatnot. But yeah, the ranch was that was definitely the highlight.
It was a lot of fun, and I just enjoyed that. I didn't feel like we had to do anything. There wasn't a schedule. You didn't have to go see this family and that family and pretend to like presents and hand gifts out here and do this. I'm not much of a traditional person, and I'm simply exhausted of all of that with the just growing up the way that we did, and then being married for several years. When we lived in Illinois. When we were married, we had 5 Christmases.
Jesus.
Every year to juggle. Right.
Yeah. Fuck that. Yeah, that's way too much, man. That's over the top.
Well, I did table the idea that everyone get together. We rent a community center or something, and everybody get together. And nope, wasn't tradition. It wasn't the. I'm like, okay.
One thing I really appreciate about my folks is that as we've gotten older, they're like, okay, what do you want to do? It's not like we're upholding any traditions from when we were younger. They understand that we're adults, we have our own lives, we have other people involved, so they're very open to however we want to celebrate it. So it's I could do without Christmas personally. It's, it doesn't mean anything to me other than seeing the family. But, I live in the same town, so I can go see them whenever the fuck I want. So
yeah. Now, this Christmas was one of the best for me. Just... Again, not having any obligations. The weather was nice. We got to shoot clay birds. So I'm looking forward to that. I've got company coming in this weekend. And so that's going to be fun. We're going to go spend New Year's with Matt and Becca. And so I'm looking forward to that as well. But it's, of course, you've been here an hour, but it's Tuesday. Jesus.
Sure
it is
about
Tuesday.
that?
Yeah, it's like, I had to look at my watch. I'm like, it's not Wednesday. It's the middle of the day. Came down here at noon because you're going to be leaving. Are you leaving tomorrow?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think that's the only hole in the storm that's fucking pummeling us
Gotcha.
right now. So the shitty part though is that there's, it rained last night. It's raining all day today. So that means up in the mountains, it's snowing like a motherfucker up there. But then it's sunny tomorrow. So there's going to be all the fucking assholes with season passes that live in the Bay Area are going to be trying to get up Highway 50. And it's probably going to be a bit of a mess. They're like, oh, the weather's going to be good. And it's like, it's still icy. Like,
sometimes I'm glad I'm not coordinated enough to do stuff.
Yeah, right.
Like have fun and get in the middle of a crowd.
Yeah. Dude, the resorts are like, it's not fun to snowboard anymore, personally. Because if you want to be able to actually ride, you got to go during the week, which you can't, I can't really just take off for a day and go ride, And if you try to go on the weekends, the lines are just fucking out of control. And the amount they charge for like food or anything up there, I always take my own lunch, but you want to go grab a beer at the bar or something, it's like $12 for a fucking pint of Coors Light.
Like being at the ballpark.
Yeah, exactly.
Huh.
Yeah. So everybody up there's got money, so they're extorted.
I've never been to a ski resort.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to take you either.
No.
You'd probably get hurt just trying to get off of the fucking gondola.
It. Yeah. I guarantee it. I get hurt. I'd fall off the bar stool.
Right.
Damn.
Yeah.
But no, it's a week between the holidays. It's always a kind of an off week for a lot of businesses. I know a lot of people I talk to were taken off or given the option to take off. And I took off this week and next week just to kind of continue to build stuff here behind the scenes. But the main reason was I was ready to take some time off and kind of detach and come into the office on a more relaxed schedule. And which it's been good. It's already, now that the Christmas holiday weekend is over, it's already been a really good recovery for me, and I'm already getting excited about next year and new clients and new appointments. I've got, I think, four, maybe 5 spots left for the coaching. If that doesn't get taken up in January, somebody can jump on in February or whatever. I just restructured things that was the spots that we had available. But a lot of really interesting, pretty great conversations about during the consult. I always have consults with people. So getting to kind of see what people are doing and where they are and some of the turning parts of their business. But one of the things that I've learned is people still really don't understand what the coaching is. And that's just because I don't self-promote very well. And we talk about it almost in passing, or a specific example. But so I have gotten a lot of questions lately about what the coaching is. And to summarize that, because I don't want to jump into a 35-minute explanation, but we're going to focus on leadership development. That's going to be the primary objective. So, which means you can't hire me and be like, oh, here, talk to my team. It's like, it doesn't work that way. I'll talk to your team in conjunction with talking with you, working with you.
But you're the primary.
So leadership development, that's what we're going to look at. To coincide with leadership development is going to be operations, business operations or systematic operations, sales, communication. There's going to be things that we bring to the table in our conversations and in the leadership coaching that's going to just complement that. But it's if we start working together, you're going to take a personality profile test. That's one of my onboarding staples now. Is you're going to take a personality profile. I want to know what are the top 2 or 3 things that you want to get out of the coaching? What are the top 2 or 3 pain points in priority, by the way? And what are the top 2 or 3 pain points in priority that you're feeling? Because we can expedite so much of our growth in the beginning. And this is something I learned throughout this year and working with people. It's like, all right, let me let's see if we can encompass this conversation into an onboarding process, and then we can expedite that whole growth. So, yep, there's going to be things you're going to need to do. You're going to a lot of the clients that I've been talking to, I'm sending them overhead operating expense forms, fill in the blank, because you need to know where you're operating financially. I'm not going to give you financial advice. I'm not going to give you tax advice.
Right.
But you need to know what your numbers are.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's what your CPAs are for, right? I mean, yeah, that's.
But you know, it's interesting you say that, because a lot of companies have CPAs and they don't know their numbers.
Yeah. I guess your CPA is not really providing that level of detail for you. I mean, your bookkeeper can help you out with a lot of that stuff. You know?
I think if you ask, maybe, you know, ask to spend time with your CPA, ask to have those conversations. And I know from personal experience, I would always get uncomfortable going and talking to a CPA because I didn't understand the language. And
you got to ask a lot of questions.
You got to ask a lot of questions.
Yeah. I mean, you're in the trades and they're a fucking nerd. So you need to bridge a gap there.
And just preface that conversation. And that's, I have an excellent working relationship with my CPA here, but I was very open with them. I'm like, look, there's things you're going to ask me that I don't understand what you mean. So I'm going to ask questions in a way that I can maybe get answers that helps me understand. And I've built a good communicating relationship with not only my CPA, but the people on her team as well. And that has really helped me better understand my numbers, understanding whether it's profits, percentage, overhead, whatever. Don't be afraid to ask the question. You're not going to look stupid. Don't be afraid that you're going to look stupid. They're there for a reason. Have them help you.
Right.
And so I'm not going to give them that kind of advice. Like I said, tax advice and stuff, but it's really about developing the leader or the leaders in the company.
We're trying to lubricate the machine.
Yeah. And let's get this thing to build some momentum, and let's get this thing to start creating some better awareness and a better experience in the in the marketplace. So that's kind of a summary of the coaching. But the last person that I spoke to at the end of the week last week really likes structure and was asking really good questions, really great questions. What do you expect from me? What does this look like? Basically, she said, outline me what your coaching is like. And I'm like, great question. Because it also tells me I've still not done enough on educating people on what the coaching looks like.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be working on creating some videos for that to kind of help explain that.
Yeah, that's smart. And basically, Josh just comes in, tells you you're a fucking idiot, tells you all the things you're doing wrong, and then he leaves. Just kidding.
That's what I did to you guys the first day I walked into your shop.
You're like, they're not going to make it.
I was just asking questions to make you feel that way.
Do you think that you would have, like where you're at now, do you think you would have taken us on as a client, given where we were when you first showed up?
Yeah, I just would have been able to expedite your growth.
Great. So we're the guinea pig.
Pretty much.
Good.
You guys have scars.
You're welcome, everybody.
Yeah. Because I had the information. I just didn't know how to share it. I didn't know how to scale it. I didn't know how to help implement it. And which is why I started working with you guys, I think back in 2017. And I wasn't coaching anyone then.
Right.
I was working with you guys the
coaching sessions we have now, they're a lot different than they used to be. You know, like when we first started out, there was a ton of good information and everything was there, but the coaching sessions we have now, they're a lot cleaner. Like they're very
much cleaner,
expedited.
It was very elementary back then, like very, very elementary. It needed to be, one, because that was my capacity, and two, that's where you guys were at. So it was a great alignment. But we've definitely been able to mature through that, and the coaching has matured as well.
If you want proof of that, just go back and listen to episode 25.
Oh my God.
And listen to where we're at now.
I was listening to that episode because it's related to what we're going to discuss today. And that episode, I think it's titled Follow
In order to lead, you have to follow.
Or something like that. I don't fucking remember now. But anyway, listening to you and I have a conversation at episode 25, you're exactly right. And then listening today, getting to see that evolution, that growth, and that maturity over 130 episodes from then to now, that the coaching has done the same thing. Like, I want to take what used to take me 2-3 months to do and get that done in 2 conversations instead of 2 months of conversations.
Right.
And it's actually working really well. The consults and stuff that I do have already turned into onboarding for the new spots. So they're gathering information. And what I appreciate about that is they're excited to do it.
Right. Well, because we all know we're a little fucked up and somebody's like, oh, I can help you with that. And you're like, really? It's exciting for me, right? Because I know that they have buy-in. Yeah.
And
they have problems they want to solve.
Exactly. So exciting, very exciting, but I am going to try to create some informative videos on what the coaching is and what that looks like. Also, having listened to the conversation that Garrett and I had just a few weeks ago. We kind of talk about it, and he shares his story and his growth. So that's a good podcast to listen to, but I got to figure out how to inform and educate better so people understand what it is. Because if they're not sure, I think they're less likely to inquire. Right. And definitely less likely to commit. So I've just got to do a better job of that. Tonight's, whatever the fuck it is. You're used to being here on Wednesday night, man. I know. I told you I wanted to talk about Followship, which was a term I learned recently.
Thanks, Tova.
Yep. Tova, in the conversation I had with her, she brought that up, leadership and fellowship. And I wanted to discuss that and kind of apply that in the means of controlled failure of what we kind of talk about. But to kind of 30,000 foot view that real quick, leaders have to understand how and when to follow. Being a good follower and kind of supportive, if you will, being in that fellowship role is going to make you a better leader. You just got to know when to do it. You're going to know how to do it. And in the sense of controlled failure, you can create those opportunities to do that. And that controlled failure is also going to give you the opportunity to develop other leaders in your team. And so I want to jump into the controlled failure aspect first. This is something that I've done with you and Matt, and it's also something I've done with a couple other clients that have kind of fairly, I say, large teams, 5 people or more. Putting someone in a leadership, a situational leadership, where if and when they fail or make mistakes, it's not going to be detrimental.
It's damage control.
Really good damage control. Having that controlled failure.
Like, they're going to fuck it up, but they have to. They have to fuck it up. You can't just tell them how to avoid that. So they're not going to understand. We've talked about that before, where people have to experience things. And I think that, especially with all of us being blue collar, none of us did well with books. Like, we did well with hands-on training. And I think that position of leadership, having that hands-on training, because what does hands-on training for fucking leadership even look like?
Being the one responsible. Yeah. Or having that sense of responsibility. Everyone should get to experience that level of leadership in your team. One of the examples I had with one of my clients was he had a young guy. He had just got his certifications or whatever and was pretty confident in his in his ability. And in the conversation with my client, really it was becoming a bit of an ego problem. And he'd been there a very, very, very short amount of time and was already asking for more money instead of adding value and performance, right? So he was already.
I fucking know more than anybody else in here. What the fuck's my extra money at?
So I told him, I said, all right, let's create an opportunity of controlled failure here. Pick a project that you have coming up and put him in charge of it. Fully in charge. You have to empower him. Obviously, you're not going to let him burn the place down, damage the company, right? But put him in charge. Let anybody and everyone know on his team that he's in charge, and give him the opportunity to be the leader. Here's
the plan set, and here's the file folder.
Yep.
Go for it.
And then so this is where Followship comes in. That's why I wanted to jump down controlled failure, is you being a part of that team is you have to play the correct role. You can't be the puppet master.
Right.
You have to play the correct role, and you have to follow their lead, and you have to allow them to make mistakes. And when he did that, he said it was a really good experience for that young man. And he realized pretty quick he didn't know what he thought he knew.
Right.
And creating that opportunity in your team, I think it's something that you should create for everyone in your team. It gives them perspective, right? Because when you are only in a fellowship role, what do you always say? Well, I can do it better.
Right. Yeah, you need that little taste of people, like
easy Dahmer.
Yeah.
Doesn't taste like Five Guys at all.
Yeah, but I think you need that. You need to see how people actually interact with people that are in positions of leadership, and exactly what it takes to gain any sort of respect there, and what it takes to have your voice heard to the people that are in your fellowship. And it's not what you fucking think it is. If you've never been in a position of authority like that, 90% of people are going to get in there and they're going to be bosses. They're going to point fingers and do this and that. And you'll learn real quick how much people don't respond to that.
Right. Especially
if you're the guy just coming up and you think you're going to get in there and tell some fucking old graybeard what he's going to do and point at him and all this other shit. You're probably going to be lucky if you still got your teeth at the end of that,
What a great lesson there is in that too, right?
Yeah.
But because there is this misperception of what leadership is, and you use the word authority, people confuse leadership with authority, and they think that it is is having the power to make decisions and having the power to tell people what to do.
People don't like that shit.
No. I mean, I become very spiteful when people start trying to fucking tell me what to do. And I'm aware of that, by the way. I'm aware I'm a dick when you start trying to boss me around.
Yeah.
But it creates that perception, because when you're put in a leadership role, and normally your role is fellowship, right? And you get this opportunity of controlled failure. You get to see how the communication works and why it's important and why it's effective, why transfer of information is important and why it's effective. And when you're given a project or a task or an opportunity to be the one in charge, I'm using air quotes, to be the one in charge, you get to kind of gain that perspective. And hopefully you understand, okay, now, so when I behave this way, and this is what they're asking me, this is why, right? It's like, this is why this information is important. And I think it's good to put people in a role, and I kind of leave people up to this, and that's why I say it's controlled failure. You can dictate the level of engagement that they have with the client, or past the project.
Yeah, maybe don't throw that one out there to them to go deal with the client directly.
Right. So that's why I said it does need to be controlled. But, if you've got a build or a project or anything, give them that opportunity to fail. And again, that's why I call it controlled failure, because they're going to fail on some level. No one's going to bat 1,000 in those circumstances.
Right.
Even the leader is not going to bat 1,000.
Dude, you're not even batting 500 with that shit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So recognizing the value that can add to the team and putting everyone through it just gives people the opportunity to better understand how their role of fellowship really dictates the quality of leadership.
Yeah, and that once they start to see the roadblocks that they cause by their fellowship, they start to see what, like he asked me to do it this way, but I said to do it this way regardless, or I didn't take that into effect at all. I didn't think it was relevant. And then it's like, now it's your balls on the chopping block. And you're like, oh, fuck. Yeah, maybe we do need to fill out these fucking forms every day or these hot work chits or whatever. Like, especially you go work, for us being welders, we go work somewhere. Like we've been working at the Starbucks roasting facility. We have to have hot work permits every day for that stuff. These larger corporate type situations. Like you don't just walk in and start rodeoing, Like there's all the safety in dock and all this other shit, and everybody gets pissy about it. They're like, "Fuck, I gotta sit here for 2 fucking hours and go through the safety in dock." And I'm like, for one, you're getting paid, so shut the fuck up. But for two, yes, that's what they require from us. They're like, I just don't fucking understand. And I'm like, it's not for you to understand. Just fucking do it. Like I don't want to sit there and go through that safety program either. But this is their facility. It shows you all the shit that needs to be done. So let's just get it over with and move, And then once they're on the receiving end of something like that, they're like, dude, that's fucking annoying. Yeah.
This is why I need you to do the things. Right? Because when people behave that way and it creates extra work or this negative compounding experience that creates dread.
Right.
We've all had those job sites and have those job sites where we just fucking dread doing. When we had those in the HVAC industry, which it was almost always doing duct work in a crawl space, unless it was August and we were in the attic. But it was like, I would try to help them focus on the plan and not the problem. I'm like, yeah, I know there's spots that have 6 inches of water in that crawl space. I know that it's muddy. I know that we're going to be swimming in insulation and it's 160 degrees up there.
Yeah.
I know those things.
Right.
Us complaining about it is not changing those things.
Somebody still has to get up there and do it.
So let's develop a plan and execute the plan and focus on the plan. How can we work effectively and efficiently so we don't have to be in that fucking crawl space the whole time, so we don't have to be in the attic for the whole time? How can we break this up? I want to focus on those things. But if you have someone that's not in a leadership role that's constantly complaining, or you have someone that is in a leadership role that's constantly complaining, you're just muddying the water, right? It's like, stop focusing on the problem and start focusing on the solution. Because
you're not always going to be there to run interference for these people. So if they have a better understanding of what each other's positions look like, that's going to save a lot of the bullshit, And you also have to be careful with who you do this with too. Like you can't take one of your greenhorns and throw them out there to do that. Like this kind of, I feel like they need to have a certain amount of shit under their belt before you can throw them into this position of taking on a leadership role.
I'm gonna disagree, and here's why. Because that's where the leadership has the opportunity to create the controlled failure. You don't want a greenhorn running $1 million job, right, or even $100,000 job. I think it's good for those greenhorns to be put in a situation where they have to behave in a way where they make decisions, and those decisions have results, whether those are consequences or rewards. That their decisions have results. But at what level of situation you put them in, I think is really, really important.
Right. You know what? Now that you say that, I think I've seen Matt do that actually with the greenhorns. Like gives him a trailer that needs a repair, and he's like, "Okay, walk me through your plan, or fix it." And then when it doesn't come out the way Matt wants it done, then he's like, "Hey, like what the fuck? You said you knew how to do this.
Cut all that off."
Yeah, it's all coming off. So I think you're right. I mean, that's I'm thinking more along the lines of production work. Right. Like shit in the shop where it's, there's one thing between fucking up one set of trailer doors and fucking up 1,000 parts. Like we just shipped out fucking 400 and something anchor or embed plates for that tilt up. So it was like, Garrett went through, built all the jigs. He tacked everything up himself. And then the guys they burned them out in a day and a half.
You don't want a greenhorn trying to develop that jig.
Right.
That makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
The trailer repair is a great example. a small repair or a small project. Those are the things, and that's why I keep going back to the term. It's controlled. Like you're fully aware of what the potential consequences are, the potential outcome, and if you got to do it twice, that's an investment that you're willing to make.
So, what would you say that like the upper, I don't want to say management because that's we don't like that word, but upper management, what role should they be playing in this while this is going on? Should they be helicoptering, or should they be leaving them alone to their own devices, or how, like what would you say is the best route to get the most effect out of that?
I think, that's a good question. You're really going to have to implement the walk me through your plan. Okay. Because when I talk about controlled failure, I don't mean just letting go of the reins and just here, go do this.
Right.
And you come back and it's like, I can't even identify what that is.
How did you go backwards?
So I think that being in a position that you can keep them from falling off the edge is the best place to be. Set them up for failure and success. Allow them to go one direction or the other as far as you're willing. Now, you got to be careful because as high performers and someone that knows how to do it, you're going to want to correct them immediately. So I think you do need to separate yourself. I wouldn't helicopter. I wouldn't bird dog them at all. I would say, hey, this is your project. Walk me through your plan. And I'm going to check on you occasionally, but this is your project. Whatever decisions you make,
that's on you.
It's on you.
Yeah.
Also, you're going to get this guy and this guy. They're going to be on your team. So develop a plan, delegate what their roles are going to be in this project. And right,
I'm thinking of just like watching one of these motherfuckers just staring at a piece of paper and just like, hey, so you guys are gonna do this and you're gonna do this, like no eye contact,
right.
Like, is this an intimidating place to be in?
Yes, yeah. And that's part of the experience of it. That right there is because it's kind of like a keyboard bully, right? Everybody will talk shit until the spotlight's on them. And then all of a sudden they're fucking mute.
Timid.
So creating that opportunity of situational leadership, yes, you are going to delegate. Yes, you are going to be like, hey, I want you to do this and walk me through your plan. Like, let's see where we're going to go. You're going to have a plan of action for the day or for the project or whatever. Because if you're going to complain about leadership, I love that thing that you sent me this morning, by the way. It said good wages and good leaders exist, and something about
you just might be a shit employee,
basically. And Apex Welding actually shared it on his story too. Daniel did, and it's like if you're going to complain about leadership and you're going to complain about the people you work with and you're going to complain about the processes or protocols or paperwork or whatever that you have to do, you should get to experience what that role feels like. So you do have to have those initial conversations where, like you said, you're looking down and you don't want to make eye contact because you all of a sudden now you have the authority.
And you don't really want it, do you?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, and just like getting that leap that you have to make in your communicative skills from being, just a hands-on on the tools to actually trying to direct a crew of multiple people. Because we talk about all the time, communication, all problems are communication problems, right? So if you can't sit there and thoroughly tell somebody what it is that you need them to do to get this project done, it's going to get fucked up, right? And to be like, oh, well, I told them this. And it's like, well, did they not comprehend or you think they just fucked you over?
Which now you're trying to push blame.
Yeah, because either way, it's a you problem. If they tried to fuck you over, you did something they didn't like.
That's exactly right. But being in the leadership position and kind of delegating this and putting people in these situations, it's a really good test for you too, because it's going to test your followship. It's going to test your patience. It's going to test your ability to allow people to make mistakes.
Right. Yeah, because I know this for a fact. I'll get to a point where I think we're over making mistakes for some reason. Everything gets lubricated, right?
Right.
And everything's just moving right along. And you're like, cool, we have this figured out, and then I think putting people into those positions and then watching them, like you said, the mistakes being in a controlled environment, we don't have to worry about losing tens of thousands of dollars on it. It's something small and stupid. And it's like, see how you were lackadaisical here, how you weren't paying attention here, how you didn't understand how to read these plans. That's a fucking huge one, man. Like, especially our steel detailing, that stuff is complicated as fuck when it comes to those custom homes. So it's like, if you're going to throw somebody on a $10,000 beam, that's a really big. And so that's why we do QC. They have to go through and they have to fit all their parts up and set it up. And then somebody else in the shop has to come through and QC. And just watching people get weird about that, just where they just help them QC the part, where they just go through and pull tape on the measurements and make sure that they were measuring from the right location, making sure that they were measuring the right parts, that the right parts are on there. Like the nervousness that comes along with that. That's awkward enough, let alone having to go tell these people what they're going to do.
Yeah.
I don't know. I like it when people get awkward though.
It's such a great ego check. Or it's going to help you identify a severe ego problem. Because if you put someone in this situational leadership and then they just lose their shit on people, right? And they blame, you realize that you have a significant behavior problem in that individual, and that maybe that individual doesn't need to hold a position in your company.
Right.
Because when you give them the authority to make decisions and empower them to be the shot caller, it all went straight to their ego. And so it might be a good identifier too in people's qualities, characters, by putting them in situations like that. It's a really good test of humility for people. Like the example that I gave, like that kid come back and was like, okay, guess I don't deserve any more money right now. And not that I'm about getting people out of getting a pay raise.
No, but the value needs to be there.
The value needs to be there. And if people are like, again, I'm going to kick this dead horse again. It's like, if someone is going to complain about how things are operating, this is a really good way to put them out in front and give them the opportunity to say, well, I think we should do it this way. We're going to do it this way. And then let those circumstances unfold.
Because maybe it is a better way to do it as well.
It very well could be.
Yeah.
Yeah, it very well could be. And then everybody gets to learn. When you put someone in a position like this, it's important that you have an evaluating conversation afterwards, because you need to understand what they saw, what they thought, what they felt, and what you saw, thought, and felt. And is there a disconnect in that? Where are things that we can improve? What are things that went right and went wrong? If you just put somebody in that so they get their shit pushed in and then put them back in a fellowship position and you don't ever talk about it, well, you're just bullying them at that point.
At that point.
It's like, no, this needs to be constructive. It needs to be purposeful, and it needs to be specific. But it's a really good opportunity. So when you designate that, people also need to understand the hierarchy of communication. When I work with clients, I tell them, I say, I understand you need a flow chart, but if you hand me an org chart or flow chart, I don't look at it as a hierarchy of control. I look at it as a hierarchy of communication.
This is how we distribute information.
Exactly. Yeah. This is the pathway I need to take to effectively communicate throughout the company.
The Boilermakers were huge on that. Like, when, Matt and I were running a crew of 32 Boilermakers. They had their shop steward or whatever that worked during the day, but there wasn't one of them at night. But we were not allowed to talk to the crew whatsoever. Like, we would get grievances if we talked to the crew. We were only allowed to talk to the shop steward. And it was like, this isn't going to work. Like, and the guy wasn't very good at relaying the information either. So it was like, he would hear what he wanted to hear and then go tell the crew that, and then they get all pissed off at us. And it was just, I feel like those open lines of communication, they need to be open with everybody. There shouldn't be like, oh, you don't talk to that guy. It's like, come on. Like, let's be fucking logical about this shit, But I've seen that, it seems like as things scale up, that's kind of where shit goes. And it's like, this seems like a bad idea, you know?
The hierarchy of communication is to create efficiency. That's it. It's not meant to separate people. It's not meant to dictate who you can and cannot talk to. It simply should be designed to increase efficiency. That way, you know who can make decisions, who you need to talk to, but you should be allowed to talk to anybody on that flow chart. That I agree with. The fact that there's boundaries or limitations of communication with the people on there.
Well, it almost created like sects, like classes, and it's like the guys that were, you know, the journeymen were better than the apprentices, and then the foremans or whatever. And it's like, dude, some of the foremans are some of the dumbest motherfuckers I'd ever talked to. The journeymen were far better off without having that foreman involved. Like, that guy fucked everything up because he'd been there for long enough, so he just had given up on doing the actual job, and he was protected. So it was really, it kind of sucked to watch it because it was like people were just getting shit on down at the bottom, you know? Like, the apprentices were, dude, they were whittling dicks out of soapstone down there because they weren't giving them anything to do. They were just like, oh, yeah, no, you're here to build a paycheck, not a pipeline. And I was like, dude, you guys got a guy in here that's a 14th year apprentice. Like, do you think that might have something to do with it? The fact that you guys just kind of let him fuck off and do whatever all day, like, maybe you should direct him. But if I say anything, I'm like, hey, dude, what are you doing? I don't know. We're going to talk to my shop steward.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. You know, like that disconnect it's pretty severe, but I think that you're right that there does need to be that. I think it's more of a decision-making tier than it is necessarily like a information distribution tier, right? Like, it's somebody's going to make a bigger decision along the way.
Levels of empowerment are going to change with positions and roles in that org chart. Absolutely. You can't have somebody on the bottom with the same authority and empowerment as the guy on the top. Like,
it's called communism, theoretical communism.
So yes, you do need to know, but I think this is also a really good example of why having defined roles in the company is important.
Yeah.
It's not about whether you're a fucking helper or an apprentice. It's not about that. I'm not talking about labels or titles. I'm talking about roles. What responsibilities and expectations does that role have? That way, when you plug that person into that role, they have an understanding of what they're supposed to do. And again, what are those boundaries? What are their limitations? What are they empowered to do and not do? What are their expectations? Every single time I go through roles, responsibilities, and expectations with business owners, I tell them, I said, listen, expectations, you have to put on there something as simple as, we use this format to clock in and out. This is an expectation of this position. You're expected to be here and ready to work when you clock in. So you need to be here earlier than that. You need to be in uniform. That's an expectation. You need to have this gear, PPE. That's an expectation. So that doesn't necessarily fall under the responsibilities. Those are expectations. And I said, so it's going to sound simple because you already understand it.
It almost seems a little belittling.
A little bit. But you have to clearly define those expectations.
You will wipe your ass after you get done shitting.
Even if you're going to shit again. Why? I don't want to. Oh, God. But it sounds that stupid, right?
Yeah.
It really does. But that's the reality is, if you don't have those clear expectations, you don't have those clear guidelines, people are going to behave at their own level. And when you let most people behave at their level, you're going to be disappointed.
Yeah.
You have to set expectations for people, and then you have to give them the opportunity to meet those expectations. And when they're not meeting them, you have to give them the opportunity to learn those expectations and what they need to do, which means you have to lead, you have to train, you have to teach, you have to coach, and you have to get people up to a point where you find out that either A, they're just not capable, so they don't have the capacity at all, or they're in the wrong position, they're playing the wrong role in the company, and they're a better fit somewhere else. or they're in the right role, but you find out what their ceiling is. As a leader, that's your responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
And to kind of tie that in with the conversation, it's like giving the people the opportunity to lead is going to help you identify what that capacity looks like,
Mm-hmm.
what those really are. We had a guy in the HVAC company. God, he was there, I think the whole time I was there, and he couldn't measure duct fittings. He didn't have the mental capacity to correctly measure a duct fitting. And I put him through all kinds of training.
Mm-hmm.
I trained him at.
That's where you fucked up.
Well, that's probably true. I wasn't the first go-to because we had a guy that was a fabrication just master.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, you got to teach this guy how to measure fittings.
Help us.
That didn't work. It just never worked. Like those two dots never connected.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So for me to continue to push him to an expectation that is unachievable
Mm-hmm.
it's not fair to him or the position that he plays.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to go, okay, where is he a best fit? What role can he best play? And in that industry, being a team leader and someone that's making decisions that is empowered,
Mm-hmm.
that was a required skill set.
Right.
You needed to be able to do those things on a level where you understand them so you can communicate them
Mm-hmm.
correctly. And the concept that we're discussing tonight was something that I wasn't aware of when I had my company. And it's one of the skills that I wish I did have back then,
Mm-hmm. because
I know how I could have used it to solve so many problems
Mm-hmm.
within my company and putting people in those leadership roles. So, with that guy, yes, he was in a leadership position because he was early on. We were growing and developing, and he kind of, my business partner decided that he needed to be in this role. Okay. It would have given me the opportunity to find better fit.
Mm-hmm.
It would have given me the opportunity to be proactive to situations instead of having to be reactive to situations,
Mm-hmm.
and figure out that he just didn't have the skill set
Right.
along the way. I think being able to put people in situational leadership and creating this controlled failure would have expedited my ability to learn what people's strengths and weaknesses are
Mm-hmm.
in real time.
Yeah. No, I could definitely see that. I mean, that's a really good way to, like I said, with the plans reading. Like, if you have somebody trying to tell everybody else what these plans say and you know that they're fucking wrong, it's like, well, okay, hold on. Like, we really need to work on this before we move anywhere else. Like, do you not understand? Is it, do you need to be walked through with it? Because if you look at, like our bid set plans that we get in comparison to our steel detailing, they're read very, very differently, because you have to jump back and forth between detail pages and floor layouts and the architecturals for the elevations. Like, there's so much shit that goes into it. So the guys out in the field are reading a different set of plans than what the guys in the shop are reading for the steel detailing. Well, we need to have a little bit of controlled failure there as well. Their transition from in the shop, because everybody starts out in the shop, their transition out in the field, because you're going to be reading a lot of different shit once it comes to that, So that's kind of I like that point of really being able to hone in on where the training needs to occur.
Mm-hmm.
And because there's some stuff like it being in a leadership position, as your business has grown, your team's capabilities have grown. So there's shit that they know how to do that I don't.
Mm-hmm.
So like if I know that somebody isn't able to do whatever it is we're talking about, I need to go find the right person to bring them in to talk to that person. Like you're saying with your master fabricator, like, and you got to be able to swallow your fucking pride, and go have that conversation. Be like, hey, I need you to explain this to him because I can't do it.
Yep. Oh yeah. My skill set did not complement training and coaching that individual.
Mm-hmm.
I was not the correct person for that.
Right.
I had the right people on the team that could.
Mm-hmm.
I think that, also understanding the sense of fellowship, and in that example like that, and that controlled failure is think it's a really good way to see if you operate as the easy button a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And because the easy button is really, you're just enabling behavior,
Mm-hmm.
right? And if you put someone in that role to make decisions and empower them, and maybe they're not a greenhorn, but they have been there for a while, and they can't make decisions on your behalf, that's your problem,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's a you problem,
Yeah.
as you say. And it's like, okay, well, am I being an easy button for that individual? How come they don't understand how to make decisions?
Mm-hmm.
And like having guys in the field adds a completely different element than having people in the shop.
Mm-hmm.
When you have guys in the field, they need to be able to make decisions.
Yeah.
They need to be empowered to make decisions. They also need to fully understand the value of when they call in with a problem, that they already have a solution or a solution in progress,
Mm-hmm.
kind of thing.
Well, it's shit, because a lot of the places we go, they don't have that option. You know, you go up to the lake, there's a lot of dead spots up there for
Mhm.
cell phones. So it's like, you could be out working on a job, and now all of a sudden you got to make a 5, 6, 10-minute drive up the road to go make a fucking phone call.
Mhm.
Like, ain't nobody got time for that shit, because if it's a 5-minute drive, it's going to take you half an hour. You know, by the time you get up there and back and fucking have your phone conversations with all this other shit, when the rest of the crew's just sitting there waiting, like, we need to be able to pull through and get shit done. Like, I mean, I get it that could be, you know, something that does need to happen, but it should be a last-ditch effort, right?
Exactly. If you're continuing to have to be the easy button, and having people in the team is a real good example of situational leadership, because when you send a crew out or a person out or a team of 2 or whatever, when that person is doing that job, they need, even if it's in the shop, okay, I want people to understand, like, whether it's in the field or in the shop, that person needs to understand how to make a decision that's going to generate the result,
Mm-hmm.
and what their limitations and boundaries are. And if they don't do that, then putting them in a position of controlled failure, again, is a really good way to help you understand where do they need guidance? Where do they need to understand that they just need to make this decision,
Mm-hmm.
right? Is it lacking trust? Is it not understanding the expectation? Are they lacking a skill set? Like you were talking about earlier, is there an opportunity for training?
Mm-hmm.
There's so many different facets of how you can use this simple principle
Mm-hmm.
to identify areas of your team and yourself and your business that you can improve on.
Mm-hmm.
Just
Well,
let it fail.
I think, especially like the skill training, the controlled failure in the skill training, the place I see that the most in our industry is carbon arcing. Carbon arcing, it takes a bit of finesse to figure it out, but if you fuck up, you gouge your material really bad. And watching people just blow through shit, and it's like, you did exactly what I told you not to do,
Mm-hmm.
or asked you not to do, you know. But it's, you know, Nick goes out of his way to set up trainings for the guys. Half the time they won't show up. So Nick's like a little frustrated about the whole thing,
Mm-hmm.
and then something will come up. No bullshit. The next week, like he set up a training for beam splices.
Okay.
One guy showed up like 3 hours late. I'm
So
like,
basically no one showed
why the
up.
fuck are you here? Like,
Right.
Yeah. Why would you expect Nick's to still be here? You
Yeah.
know? But that very next week, I had to fucking do a beam splice. The steel detailers had fucked up on an elevation for one of our moment
Mm-hmm.
frames. So we had to go out and do a full pin beam splice. Nick's the only one that can fucking do it. And Nick he got into him pretty good about it, you know, but they failed by not even being able to show up. And I think they felt like shit more about it because of that, because they weren't capable of going out and doing what needed to be done.
Yeah. Because
So,
they made a decision. To not learn,
Yeah.
to not train.
Mhm.
And that's,
They had something better to do that day.
yeah, I mean, we can have we've had some conversations about it, but like the whole training thing, like if you're not going out of your way, and I say that like a smart ass because it's, you have to fucking invest in yourself.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to expect compensation, if you're going to expect reward for your behavior, you have to understand that it's not based on your behavior, it's based on your value.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not willing to learn, then don't don't expect to gain more.
Mhm.
Don't expect to be rewarded because you fucking show up every day.
Mhm.
Like I shared that post, I think it was last week. It's like, you have to understand, you don't get paid for your time.
Mhm.
The time and money is just a metric. It's just a measurement of how you're compensated. So there's an easy calculation to reward you.
Mhm.
But gracing us with your fucking presence
Right.
and then getting paid for it
Right.
is the worst mindset and worst concept of getting paid.
Mhm.
If you're not going to train, if you're not going to learn, if you're not going to do things for yourself off of the clock,
Mhm.
then you're the fucking problem.
Right. Right.
You can't complain. You can't bitch about your boss. You can't bitch about your situation or your circumstances because you're the one creating the
Mhm.
situation and these circumstances because you feel that it's just that you should be paid to learn to get paid.
Mhm.
I don't fucking understand that.
Yeah. I always jump to every opportunity to
Mhm.
learn something new in the industry. But I was also like fascinated by it. You know, there's still a couple of processes that I don't know, but I mean, I can run just about every process that's involved, you know, like I've never done any, nuke plant stuff and, I've never done oxyacetylene welding, but I mean, MIG, TIG, stick, you know, all the types of stick, even aluminum stick welding, which that stuff is fucking bullshit. Don't ever use that shit. It's going to fall apart and potentially kill somebody. But I knew that there was going to be more opportunity because we got, let's see, it was 2010. It was right before we went up to Canada. And the 2008 crash hadn't caught up yet to the industry because most of those big water projects, they're bid 5 years before you ever fucking do them, you know, some of this larger stuff. So it finally caught up and I'd learned how to carbon arc and I'd learned how to TIG weld and that landed me a couple of jobs and kept me working while everybody else was like, I'm fucking sitting at home. Why the fuck are you out there? Well, I'm like, can you TIG weld? Well, no. Okay. Well, there's the thing, dude, you know, like,
Yeah.
And it took a couple of weeks of me sitting at home. And I'm like, fuck, I got to do something. So then I just started honing my skills and learning how to carbon arc, learning how to TIG weld. I invested $4,000 in a TIG machine that I didn't know if I was ever going to get to use it in the field or not. You know, I'm like, I need to learn this. I call myself a fucking rig welder. Like, you don't just do one process being a rig welder. You better be able to do it all. So, I mean, I fucked up a bunch of shit and, you know, my first couple of days on site weren't the cleanest, but, you know, picked it up. But I had already given myself a foundation to figure out how to do it. And I controlled my own failure in my garage by myself. Right. And then I had some damage control when I first got out in the field, but picked it up pretty quick once I put the responsibility on myself, which is what you're talking about, right? Like,
yep, that's it.
Yeah.
And training is simply controlled failure.
Mm-hmm.
You need to go in there and get as many of the mistakes out of your system as you can.
Mm-hmm.
Do it.
That's what we have scrap metal for.
Screw up big. Like, I mean, really screw it up.
Mm-hmm.
We when we would do training and stuff, because I was the same way. I jumped at every opportunity I could to get training. Some of the companies that I worked for invested thousands of dollars in me attending training in different parts of the country, and I always took those opportunities. But when we would do training, sometimes we would purposely screw it up, so we know what it looked like.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's important to know what that looks like.
That's what SpaceX does. They're hoping that their rockets crash when they come back because they want to see what happens when it doesn't go right.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Elon was talking about it. He was like, yeah, the first, 15, 20 launches, we know that they're going to crash. Like, that's kind of what we're aiming for. And it's like, you guys just fucking launched that expensive fucking rocket up there just to blow it up. But that's what it takes to do this shit, right?
The data that you gain from that, and the experience that you gain from that. When you, in brazing in the HVAC industry, we did a lot of brazing training and in different alloys, 5%, Silphos or 15% Silphos or 50, or because you needed to know how it melted, how it ran. That you need to know tensile strengths, and when you ran those in different situations, how bad did it oxidize the pipe? That's why you got to purge with this. And it's like, we would do this stuff without purging so people could see the damage that it caused, right? We would purposely fail. low voltage is the same way. Like you can burn up a control board and controls like once you let the smoke out of something, you can't get it back in there.
Yeah.
But purposely failing, right? And doing that on your own, having that sense of controlled failure on your own is just going to expedite your growth and your ability. When the opportunity presents itself to be a situational leader, you're better equipped for that now.
Right.
Because someone is going to stand up and say, I'll do it. It might as well be you.
Right.
Show that initiative. And this whole old school kind of mentality of, I don't want the fucking responsibility. I don't want to have to do all the fucking paperwork. It's like, well, do you want someone worse than you in that role making those decisions?
Right.
Do yourself a favor, do your team a favor, and equip yourself to be that person that takes on that role, to takes on that responsibility. Yes, there is a different level of requirements, responsibilities. When you have those titled positions, there's usually a little bit more paperwork, a little bit more communication, a little bit more this and that. But if you're not going to take on that role, don't fucking complain about the person that stands up and does.
Right.
And don't bitch and complain if they hire somebody from the outside in because you didn't. And
You didn't want it.
You didn't want it. So play a more supportive role. If you don't want that position, then support that position. Right? Help that individual become a leader and equip them with the knowledge that you have. Instead of going back and be like, I fucking knew that wouldn't work.
Yeah. Look at this fucking dumbass.
Yeah. It's like, well,
you just wanted to watch him fall.
That's it.
Yeah.
So it's, again, the concept of this controlled failure and this situational leadership ultimately will give you a good scale of your ability to follow. And follow without micromanagement, follow without judgment or criticism of the failure. When we would get to if we had a job site going on, my installers were at, and I went to the job site to help in any way that I could, I would always talk to my team leader, and I'd always ask him 2 questions. All right, where are we at? So I wanted updated. Where do you want me? That was it. That was my role. If they asked me to take over the job outside, I would, but I only did it if they asked me to. And there were times that they'd be like, "Hey, can you take this over?" And I'm like,
I'm drowning, Bill.
Yeah, it's like, okay, you do this, you go here, I'll do this. This is what we're going to do, and so on. And we'd get a battle plan together, and we'd get shit done. But I was there to follow. I was there because I knew it was situational. My fellowship was situational. If I had to get into the crawl space and pull ductwork, it's what I did. And I wasn't like, why don't you fucking send Nate and I'll wire up this furnace, right? It's like it wasn't about that. It wasn't about leveraging my authority to pretend to be in a position of fellowship. It's like, whatever you need done,
right?
Fucking you tell me. And the first few times that I did that with my team, they were like confused.
What's your edge here, bro?
Yeah, what do you mean? I'm like, no, what do you want me? Like, tell me what to do. What? Well, we really need all that old flex duct pulled out of the crawl space. Awesome. I'm like, hey, do you need, if we had an FNG there, and be like, hey, do you need him? Be like, no. Be like, sweet.
Yeah.
You're coming with me. Right. And then I would lead the way and we would get shit done. But understanding fellowship, understanding controlled failure, and understanding situational leadership. If you can control those ingredients, it's going to really, really equip you with so much good information about yourself, about your team, about training that you need, about potential systems or transfer of information that you need to develop. It's really going to help you gain insight into the operation of your company and the ability and capacity of the people on your team.
Fuck yeah.
So, anything else to add?
Dude, my back's killing me.
Yeah.
Right now. After my old man maneuver.
I was going to say, what are you doing there, old man?
Fucking jolted awake in the middle of the night, pulled something on my back, and just, I guess this is where we're at now. Yeah.
Welcome to the club, bud. Welcome to the club. I sleep wrong, and I feel like I get in a fight.
Right.
What is wrong with my neck? Yeah, so good deal. I will let you go. You're on the road tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna go down and work. Supposed to work at Matt and Becca's tomorrow. Get some stuff done. So
Get that tankless heater put in.
hopefully, if it comes in.
All right, Plumber Josh.
Anything you guys don't do, Josh. That's my title. That's what it ends up being. But you can find Nate on Instagram at NateNewton87. I am on Instagram at The Tradesman Experience. Email is thetradesmanexperience@gmail.com. Website's thetradesmanexperience.com, and the YouTube channel is The Tradesman Experience. Thank you so much for spending this time with us. Happy holidays. Get out there, get shit done. Be proud to be a tradesman. See ya.